All right.
All right. So here we are. So welcome everybody. This is our inaugural episode of the Engine Room here at NGINX. And today we're going to be talking about what the show is, how we thought about the idea, a little bit about the history of NGINX. We'll do a couple of demos. We'll talk a little bit about ourselves. But this is the show that is while it's put on by NGINX, it's about all technologies and technologies that surround and work with NGINX. So pretty much anything's on the table. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go around the horn here and let's everybody introduce ourselves, and then I'll do a little bio for myself at the end. So Alessandro, you want to take it away?
Yeah, my name is Alessandro Garcia. I'm a senior solutions engineer in the NGINX community and alliances team. I've been at NGINX forever, almost 6 years in May. And I don't know what else to guys, a little bit more background. I studied bioengineering in college. That clearly did not pan out because I'm here. So I then did a master's in computer science, landed an internship at NGINX, and the rest is history. Passion topics, main things I do day to day. I'm the main developer / maintainer of the Ansible NGINX rules and of the Docker NGINX unprivileged image. And beyond that, I also help out with various alliances related tasks and community, engineering tasks whenever I can.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the curtain back on our man behind the curtain there, Marco. He's our producer. Marco, you want to give just a short talk about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Marco Martinez. I've been with the NGINX business unit for about going on 6 years now, handling all of their video and social media promotion. So any of those great videos that you see on YouTube, I help produce, and I'm helping produce this, and we'll be monitoring questions in the chat. So just a reminder to add those questions on chat. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch now, which is great, and Twitter. So that's a little bit about me. I'll be in the background kind of watching these two heroes go at it.
Heroes, okay. I've never achieved hero status, but I'll take it. I'll take anything I can get, right? My name is Dylen Turnbull. I've been with NGINX. I'm actually the baby. While I am the old man in the group, I am the young man when it comes to NGINX. I've only been with NGINX, I think, going on about 3 years now. And I actually joined after the acquisition of NGINX by F5, which we'll talk about when we go into the history of F5 and F5 NGINX history, starting all the way from the beginning. I am also a solutions architect. I do a lot of work with partners in the development relations arena, and I actually got my start back in 1997. So that's how old I am. And I was a bartender before I started, and decided I didn't like working in bars anymore. So I picked up a bunch of parts from the Goodwill and a Windows 95 book and some floppy disks, if you guys can remember what those are. They're these little tiny disks and I think Windows 95 came on like 8 of them, if I remember correctly. And I spent 8 months, because I knew nothing about computers, getting to know Windows and hardware and whatnot. And then after that, I got a job working for Symantec, and then I went on to work for a company called Veritas, and then I met a gentleman by the name of Paul Pindell, and he's actually the reason I went to F5. So we kept running into each other at the airport, and he did some, let me know there was a job opening, so I applied, and I went through the rigmarole of interviewing, and then about 2.5 years later, we acquired NGINX, and then I joined the NGINX Community and Alliances team, and I have been with that group ever since. My day-to-day, I work on the Rancher partnership and several other open source technologies with Alessandro and many of our other colleagues. And my passions, I'm a big gamer. I play several games. One of them Star Citizen. If you get me talking about games, I'll literally go for hours. So we're going to avoid that topic. But not only do I play games, but I also develop games. So I work. I'm a game development enthusiast. I work with the Unreal Engine as well as the Unity engine, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. So I guess the next bit is we're gonna spend a little bit of time, and we're gonna talk about the history of NGINX. And Marco, if I get off topic or if I'm not following what our loose agenda was, I might call and ask you like what's next up on the topic. I'm an old guy, I forget things.
For sure, I'll make
so
sure we're on track.
I
Thanks.
might have forgotten already if you actually did mention it, but did we ever talk about what the show is about? If you did,
I just touched on it briefly, but why don't you go ahead and give the audience or the folks in chat give them the run through of why we created this and what we're going to be doing.
That's a good question. Why did we create this? Well, fundamentally, it's a better way to reach out to community. Show what's cooking inside NGINX and outside NGINX too, where it makes sense. There's another way to have all of you fancy, nice folks that might be joining here today to ask any questions you might have about NGINX or like how things are at NGINX or, just come see what we think about things.
Yeah. Well, in that same vein, I feel like there's a lot a lot to know about NGINX. What people might have heard it, and that brings us probably to one of the topics I kind of want to discuss is how do you pronounce NGINX? That's like a big one. I mean, I've heard many things. So first, I want to give a big shout out to a couple of folks in chat real quick. Benoit, thanks for showing. It's good to see you, my friend. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to talk like we're supposed to. And Hannah, absolutely good. Hannah Olette is our community manager. So if you're in chat, give her a big wave. Real quick in chat for the folks that are in there, tell me as best you can phonetically spell it, if you can do that with chat, what the worst pronunciation of NGINX you've ever heard is, and then we'll kind of go around the horn and ask the crew here what we've heard. So we'll give chat a few minutes to catch up and see if they have some interesting pronunciations of NGINX. How about we start with Marco? You've been here the longest, I think, or close to the longest. So what's the worst pronunciation of NGINX
I think
you've heard?
I think it was like engines like somebody just was trying to say NGINX. Like we were just trying to go in, like they were trying to add the N and G. And then the NGINX, it just was it was not a good attempt. It was a nice attempt, but still not good.
That's funny. How about you, Alessandro?
I was looking the other day that there was one time where I heard a pronunciation so weird that I made a mental note about it, but I have totally forgotten what it was. The most common one that I see everyone use is the world famous NGINX, which I guess kind of makes sense. That's in a way why we named our cat Jinx, or unofficial.
Yeah. Our chief engineer.
Our chief engineer too.
Yeah.
Holding this as we speak.
He's getting promoted.
What's another one that I remember that was kind of funny? There was one where the guy was just spelling out the letters of NGINX instead of trying to say something that pronounce it as the same word.
NGINX.
Yeah.
It's like BINGO.
Yeah. NGINX or something like that. I don't know. It's just weird.
That's funny.
That's
funny. Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. It's not a name that makes sense or screams you how to say it out of the box. Especially if you're not a native English speaker where, you can put things together and be like, hey, it's like engine and an X. It's like the engine of which that last word doesn't make much sense, but it is an engine of sorts.
Yeah, that is true.
We have
Yeah, chat's got a few ideas there. What do you see, Marco?
Hannah has NGINX. Then we have Benoit with NGINX. Then Jordan with NGINX. And then Catherine, part of the Community Alliances team as well, and also runs Sprint. Been with us for a while on NGINX. Has NGINX. That's a really good one.
That's my favorite one now. I love that one. NGINX. that's like a new form of martial arts, right? If you pull out, you're gonna pull out the NGINX and the NGINX and go to town.
Ishmael has NGINX, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of where we were going with the name of the show, right? And then Steve Wagner has NinjaX, which is maybe a product we'll put out next time. But
well, I want to know. Okay, Nick, if we ever see each other in real life, if you're ever at a KubeCon or if you're part of the NGINX group and I don't know that, I would like to hear that pronunciation because obviously that exactly. I'd love to hear what that sounds like personally. That's amazing. Well, for me, the worst one I heard is, what was it? It was, I got to get this right. It was NGINX. Like it was some sort of like new wave, like way to make money. It's like you're like the try NGINX. It'll change your life.
Just buy NGINX for and then get
exactly
to buy NGINX and then so on, right?
It's the latest supplement for web development. NGINX.
Cool.
All right, cool.
Yellow day. Who knows? Oh, I do gotta say though, I'd love to see one of our future products be NinjaX. I don't know what
NinjaX.
it does yet, but like
there you go.
That's how you
security
develop
product.
You start with a good name, and then you actually figure out what it is that you're creating.
Yeah, exactly. Let's name it first and then make it later. Try to make the product live up to the name.
People will actually buy it no matter what or use it. It's called NinjaX. It's like it doesn't want a ninja.
Well, I will say this, that I would say that NGINX for me, I mean, I'd run into NGINX a bunch of times at conferences, both when I was in F5 and Veritas and Symantec, and it always had this kind of mystique about it, which is interesting because one of the things, if you've ever attended a con, which I generally go to the SUSCon and I also go to KubeCon, and I know many of our team, I know you attended GitHub Universe last year, and it is amazing to me what people will go through to get NGINX Swag. And we've got some cool stuff. My favorite is my coffee cup. And I have one that was custom designed that I'll show chat here in a little bit. But everybody on our team got one, so don't be jealous. But what's the weirdest thing you've seen someone in a booth do to try to get NGINX Swag? I bet Hannah has some great stories about this.
I know, at least in my experience, I've seen people, I don't want to say steal, but just kind of steal in a way, just, sneakily walk up to the booth while we're all busy talking to other people or whatnot, and just grab swag and quickly make their exit, which I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Ask us, we will give it to you. Like, if you really don't, in most of these conferences and booths and whatnot, you usually need to get scanned to get something like a t-shirt, right? But like, if you really want it and you want to avoid getting scanned, that's usually fine too. Just come talk to us and we'll figure it out. We'll give you something for the most part. Just don't go behind our backs and take it. It's
yeah.
But
I
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Marco.
When people come to the booth, I've seen people kind of circle and not want to engage. And then when they do and engage with us, I got to say, everyone at our booths are so friendly and so knowledgeable that even if you're not wanting to talk about to get some swag to talk with us, I think even just the conversations. Like I've just seen hey, let's just talk about the event or what's going on. We don't necessarily need to talk about NGINX. It's just building community, building relationships that I think that's really great whenever people do come up and ask us for swag. I don't have any horse, but I just like that, it's not this like, hey, you have to do this, this, and this to get this piece of swag. Sometimes it's like people just being fans of NGINX and wanting to, represent us.
Which I think that's amazing. I think there are very few open source technologies that are still in existence today that actually have a fan base. And I would say that NGINX is one of those technologies where there is actually a fan base. I mean, I don't really have any horror stories, but I do have some good stories. I'll pick one from the last KubeCon, which was the Detroit KubeCon. And my favorite part about that was very much like you're talking about, Marco. We were all sitting in the booth. It was me and Matt Yakabuchi and a couple other folks that work at NGINX from the Dublin team. And all of a sudden, it turned into like one guy came up, and then another guy came up, and then some guy from what was it? It was DigitalOcean came up, and we got in this huge discussion about whether or not we needed a network overlay anymore. Which was and it turned into this big group discussion, and I think that's pretty cool because I've worked a bunch of booths for a bunch of different companies, and I have to say NGINX is one of the only ones that I can recall that where that happens, where you just have these like random like developer breakout sessions that happen in the middle of the booth. So, all right. So on the next topic, Alessandro, do you want to give us a little bit of the history of NGINX, maybe starting off with Igor and his what did you call it the other day? His hero story.
I'll just briefly mention that at some stage here is where we'd hopefully have a show intro, which we don't have because we're still building this live stream. So just imagine, nice cutesy, I don't know, 30-second intro video playing right now. But next time, even a month, maybe 2 months.
Yeah, we need some interpretive dance here. All right. So you want to take care of that, Marco?
I'm not a subject expert on interpretive dancing. We should bring a guest speaker from our team. There's a couple ones that...
Yeah, we need Elijah and a couple of other folks from our team that are good at that sort of thing.
Dancing intro. But, maybe one day. All right. So, NGINX history. We figured we'd briefly bring it out since the first episode, just use a little bit of context. I won't get into the nitty-gritty necessarily, because I don't think most of you showed up here for a lesson in history. But, it's still good information to know and know about. I will say the actual... Yeah, it's just basic Cliff Notes version. I have a very long version here in my browser that I could just read out, but that sounds boring.
Well, everybody loves a good backstory, so...
Yeah, just let me share my screen.
Put on your best Marvel voice, and then in a world.
I wish I could do that. No, I don't. I don't have a deep voice, for better or worse. Let's see, window. Share my screen. There we go. All right. It'd be cool to have like some epic music playing in the background. I don't know. We have some options for music in StreamYard, but I don't know that we have epic music as one of the options. So just picture epic music playing right now. So circa, what year was it? Well, accounts differ.
2004, I think.
Yeah, no, that's when it went open source. But accounts differ on when the initial idea for NGINX happened. What we know is that around 2001, this guy Igor, CCOF, I don't know how to say his name. I don't want to blunder it either. So we'll just call him Igor. Igor CCOF. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I think it's pronounced Igor Sisyov is the right pronunciation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sorry if that's not how you say it. I don't speak
Yeah,
Russian.
apologies, Igor, if that's not how it's
Yeah.
pronounced. We're
So probably circa 2001, he wrote an Apache mode to replace the proxy mod that Apache was shipping with. That mod improved the overall performance of Apache, but still, according to Igor and his research, had some scalability issues and could not face that C10K famous C10K problem for those that were around back in those days, which I was not because I'm too young for that. But there was an issue where, for the most part, we didn't know. Well, there was no really good web server alternative out there that could handle 10K simultaneous connections without crashing.
yeah, because the dominant one was Apache back then, right?
Yeah,
And
which is why
dare I mention Microsoft's atrocity that they foisted upon the world.
that was never. It's never been one of the but it's always been like a close second or third. It's always like they're lurking, never dying.
There you go. By hook or by crook, right?
I lost my train of thought. Yeah. Anyways, he rewrote a new Apache mod. It still couldn't get the Apache performance where he wanted it to be. He wanted, for some reason, one day he decided he wanted to try to solve this C10K problem, develop something that will be able to handle 10K concurrent connections. So he decided to, as a good engineer, to take the matter on his hands and just develop it himself. And that's what he did. He started working on it from what I have here on my stats in spring 2002. Just the initial scaffolding for the project. Then he started working a little bit more towards 2003. In fall 2003, he had a working NGINX, a very alpha version of NGINX that could do some things such as some simple web serving, some simple support for threads, but it was just starting right then. Cue another half year, spring 2004, a few more features get implemented and built. You have now support for things like gzip and being able to create a master process as well as multiple worker processes, which we might cover at some stage why that is one of the best features that NGINX comes with, and it really helps with performance. And in 2004, summer 2004, he implemented some final features such as support for SSL, POP3 IMAP for people that wanted to use NGINX as a mail server. Even though in practice, I do gotta say it's not a very common use case, but people do use it as a mail server. And then in October, now I don't know if this is a European style date or a US style date. So let's just say on the 47th Sputnik anniversary, which I'm gonna assume was October 4th, 2004, he released the 0.0.1 public release of NGINX as an open source project. Cue another 3 years. No, not more than 3 years. Cue another 8-9 years of developing NGINX open source. I kept gaining more traction. Slowly became one of the most popular web server in the world. I don't know if by the time NGINX was founded, it was already that, but it was getting quite close to that. But it was around 2012, 2013. Let me see if I can get in here. 2011. Around 2011, he decided, or I guess someone approached him about, maybe creating a commercial version of NGINX. At the beginning, it was just about offering some paid support, and he kept seeing people asking questions, posting issues and whatnot, and he was like, might as well get some money for all the work I've put into this project, which I think we can all relate to. Come 2012, in 2011, he founded NGINX Inc. 2012, he started offering commercial support, and then in 2013, NGINX Plus was born. and I think also at the same time it led a Series B investment. Anyways, NGINX became officially a startup, offering commercial support as well as NGINX Plus, which is a slightly more advanced version of NGINX, which includes some enterprise-level features. We're not going to necessarily talk much about it on this show, but it's good to know that it exists.
So I have a question. As a recent addition in the grand scheme of things to NGINX, for anybody that's in chat that might have been around during those days, or Marco, you might have been around during those days. When did Gus join the company? The great and powerful Gus.
I want to say 2014, I believe, but I gotta Catherine's in the chat, she can put it in the chat the like official day, but I believe it was 2014.
Okay. Yeah, and for those that don't know, Gus was Gus was the former CEO prior to the acquisition by F5. So.
Yeah. Also, I see in chat, it would be nice to have a visual timeline. I agree. I thought we had one. We definitely had one in one of the wallpapers that in the old NGINX office that I hope someone took a photo of. I was not able to find that timeline, but if we do find it, we could maybe post it on social at some stage.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't take that as an action item to create it for a future episode and just bring it on and give a quick update on here's the timeline if you're interested.
I will say I do have another picture of, I think that was the time to finalize the Series B round of investment, as far as I know, of the core NGINX enterprise team. So the rightmost end, which might be your left. I don't know how this translates to an actual live stream, but I'm gonna seem you're seeing it the way I say it. I don't know if it's mirrored or not. But on the rightmost end, there's Igor. Then next to him is Maxim. Next to him is Gus, the NGINX CEO. The guy next to Gus, second from the left, I actually forget his name. Hopefully someone knows and can tell me about it, either in chat or I don't know if Marco knows. And then on the left side of all is Maxim, who became basically a right-hand man to Igor, as well as eventually took some of the lead development. Still to this day, actually, is the developer, if I'm not mistaken, of NGINX.
Yeah, and for those that don't understand the relevance of this is the first picture was essentially the entire like the first two Iron Man movies, and then this is the very first the very first Avengers movie right here.
There you go.
So I'll leave it up to you guys to decide who's Thor, who's the Hulk, who's Iron Man, and who are the rest of the supporting cast there. So
Alessandro, you asked about the guy on the left with Gus.
Yeah, so Andrea Alexiev.
Yep.
See, I've heard that I was a co-founder. I don't know that it has been very publicly mentioned in many of our internal and external things. Surprisingly, I don't know. Good to know, though. Hopefully, you will all remember from now on, including me. All right. Moving on from history, the latest news was when 2019, F5, a long and fierce competitor of NGINX, were always trying to overtake each other with their offerings and their campaigns and targeting each other's user base. And at some stage, F5, having all the big bucks, or at least more than NGINX did have, decided to acquire NGINX. I'm gonna say that's 2019 because that sounds right.
Yeah, no, that's about that time frame because I had joined F5 at that point, and that was like a common thread conversation on the business development team. Me and a friend of mine who also lives here where I live, and the guy who got me into F5, or at least introduced me to the folks that hired me. We were talking about, I don't know why we keep fighting with NGINX. We should just acquire them if it's possible. And, long story short, that actually is what happened. I was kind of over the moon excited when it was announced. And once you're through that part a little bit, I got a short little anecdotal story I'll share about an adventure I had in Houston just after the acquisition. So.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you want to go ahead with the story, I was just.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, I actually went to it was a configuration partner event we went to just after the acquisition, and I had just joined the team. And we were down there working with that partner in Houston, Texas, and we were going through slide material with folks at the booth, and it was brand new, and we started going through architectures. And then I came across one slide, I think, or two slides, where it was literally a compete slide between F5 and NGINX. And I'm like, well, okay, so ignore that. Yeah, that doesn't apply anymore. It, sort of. But I thought that was hilarious that I sort of like tried to find some material, and then it ended up right front and center that we used to be competitors, so to speak. But now we're not. We're better together, right?
Sure, yes.
Yeah,
I've been lucky that I was in NGINX pre-acquisition, and I've stayed in NGINX post-acquisition. So, I mean, lucky might not be the best word, but I don't interact with the wider F5 offerings that much. So, I know we have some better together stories. As far as I know, we can still make do with NGINX alone for most things, not all of them. F5 does solve some big issues that NGINX does not address because they don't play in the same space necessarily. But for all the use cases where NGINX has always been known for, you can very much just keep using NGINX alone, and you will still be able to do things quite well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's next? Is that going to be the end of our NGINX History 101 segment?
Well, insofar,
do you have a little bit more for us?
I mean, after F5 acquired NGINX, then that's pretty much where we are at if we ignore the last couple of years from happening, which did they? But,
yeah, a lot of people would like to ignore the last couple of years. That's for sure.
I don't know.
For other reasons that were non-company specific. Yeah.
And I don't know if I can say it's been smooth sailing since then, but it's gone as well as it could have gone after an acquisition. So we're still here.
I think it went fantastic, personally. I mean, the brand was maintained, which is the most important thing. And one of the reasons I actually moved over to the NGINX business development team, well, it was then called the business development team, but now we're called Community and Alliances, is because I have a history throughout Symantec, Veritas. So at Symantec, I used to work on SAP for Linux, right? So we only had one customer; it was IBM. And then I moved to Veritas, and I worked on OpenStack, and we were doing a quality of service offering for OpenStack. For the storage layer, because Veritas is, most people who know Veritas, which still exists, unlike Symantec, they wrote us like basically an OpenStack storage foundation type thing that I worked on. And then when I came to F5, I did work on like the Red Hat partnership, and I think I worked with HashiCorp for a little while, if I recall. But the big important thing for me is I've always been about community and open source projects, and that was a core fundamental reason why I joined the NGINX group. And one of the amazing things about our current CEO, Francois Locodenou, is he is 100% a man of his word, and he maintained the brand, the separation of the kind of companies. I mean, we integrate, but we are kind of a separate business unit. But we've been building more in the open source space than was present before the acquisition. So that's kind of been a big plus. And there's more to come. We're still working on it. We hired Hannah and a gentleman by the name of Dave, who they're on our Community Alliances team. By the way, if you haven't been over to our Slack, it's, what is it? Community dash. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna.
I do have a photo for that too somewhere.
Yeah.
We have the
Oh, it's right down at the bottom. It's in the banner. It's in the banner right there. So yeah, join the Slack.
At least your voice.
Absolutely. If you're here and you're not on the Slack, go get on the Slack. Alessandro's there. I'm there. A whole bunch of other really smart people are there, unlike me. Yep, Hannah's there. And there's good conversations that can occur. And if you have questions, and then in the future, as we do more of these episodes, that's going to become a real critical component to us communicating about some of the stuff we talk about in future episodes, and some of the technologies we work on, and so on and so forth. There you go. There you go.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, have something.
I forgot about this new thing, this newfangled technology that they have these days. What's that called? A QR code.
Your phone sometimes will actually recognize the QR code and take you to the intended link.
Man. I'll tell you what. I
like 80% of the time, 100% of the time, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't watched like public television. Like in 2010, I decided to completely cancel cable. So I went to all streaming services back when that wasn't a common thing. And I was watching the Super Bowl, and I was amazed at how many QR codes were in every single ad. I'm like, what is this? It's just like QR codes after QR codes after QR codes. I just picture all these hundreds of thousands of people in their living rooms getting up with their phone. They're like trying to scan the television. This is what you have to do, but it's kind of silly to me. The idea of people in their living rooms doing that is I don't know. I find it funny. So,
how do you feel about streaming services having basically become like cable these days?
Oh my gosh!
So many offerings.
This is a 2-hour show. It might turn into a 6-hour show if we start talking about that. Yeah, no kidding. I like the ones that let you cancel them for a little while or put them on pause. That's my favorite thing to do. It's just like, okay, Game of Thrones is over, pause HBO, and that sort of thing. I like the choice, but man, everybody's going to commercials, so now it's same these days. It's just like everything that was old is new again, they're supposed. Although yeah. I did, speaking of old is new, I found it funny the other day. I was watching a TikTok video of someone who was instructing someone about how to use a SIM card in a telephone. Like it was a new technology. I was like, oh man, I'm getting really old.
Nowadays, you have all these electronic SIMs, or I don't know what they actually stands for. Electronic SIM, I don't know, embedded SIM, eSIM, whatever. I can't figure out what that E stands for, just because I actually realized I don't know
either.
But I
Enigmatic.
Like this. You just scan a QR code with your phone, and suddenly you have your SIM in your phone.
Hey guys, we have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay, shoot.
One from a deer. Any off the top of your head NGINX enterprise use cases?
I mean,
we have many. Well, go ahead, Alessandro, and then I'll follow up.
They like, I don't. When I tell people about NGINX Plus and what it goes insofar as enterprise use cases, what I always tell people is that for the most part, the actual use cases they were going to be able to solve with NGINX Plus are the same ones they were going to be able to solve with NGINX open source. The difference is that enterprise and NGINX Plus, which is the enterprise version, adds extra enterprise level features that you might want. Such as, you have passive health checks with NGINX, you have active health checks with NGINX. You have support for better caching, you have a built-in REST API if you use NGINX Plus. You have, what else do you have? You have like native JOT support, which lets you add an extra layer of security to NGINX. You have a built-in key value store. So, you might be... Some of these things that NGINX Plus adds, are things that you'd be able to solve also using some other open source tool instead of using NGINX Plus. Key value stores, there's 1,000 different open source offerings that are solid and consolidated out there that will act as a key value store. But there are some benefits in having everything built in natively within the same, software. And also just the fact that NGINX is built on pure C, and that includes a lot of its offerings, which in a lot of ways adds a lot of performance and stability to it compared to some other tools that might be built using, Python, Golang, Well, I mean, I was gonna say Rasmus is not that bad performance-wise compared to pure C, but there are so many languages out there. I mean, even like some tools are built in JavaScript and whatnot, which not the most performant. I mean, it's not that they're not performant, except for Python. Python is probably never that performant in all use cases. But other languages are there, or it's not that they're not that performant, it's that when you're gonna be trying to build an application that's supposed to fit an enterprise use cases and huge quantities of people, every tiny little bit of speed that you can get out of your software is actually going to have quite a big impact when you're serving 1,000 different people at the same time. So, it's good that it's doing it in C, I guess. It's what I actually wanted to say.
Yeah. So, I agree with many of those points, and I'm a big fan of the journey story, right? So, I recently published an article on the CNCF where I compared Subway and McDonald's to Kubernetes, which is kind of my interest space. That's the technology that I focus on with NGINX. And when you talk about building technologies, everybody refers to it as a stack, right? It's a stack of technologies. And as you can, as anybody who's ever played the game Jenga before, you'll see stacks can be fun, but they can also fall over. Right. So the more you have to work on integrated technologies and you need certain libraries to do certain things, it becomes more complicated. So minimizing the number of solutions in a stack is actually beneficial to the overall application health and the ecosystem health and the infrastructure health and so on and so forth. To answer the question directly, absolutely, there are many, many, many interesting NGINX enterprise use cases. In fact, there was a gentleman on the call who, just as a quick teaser, at some point in time, he'll probably join us at KubeCon, but you might see him in the future. And I say might because I don't want to make a commitment on his behalf. You might see him in the future, and he has some very interesting stories about enterprise use cases. That being said, I agree with also that you can solve things in many ways, but I also like the idea of the zero to hero journey story. Right? You start off with nothing. You minimal set of tools, minimal investment in time, energy, money, resources, so on and so forth. And in order to be able to do that, you need to be able to move up the stack with some level of fluency, right? And part of that means, like, if you want to go, so I'll just take a Kubernetes use case. If you're using our ingress controller and you put it in place as the open source version on something like Rancher or Kubernetes or just Kubernetes in general, the upgrade path is much, much easier to go over the top because you could just do a Helm upgrade, right? And so there are benefits. Plus, you will reach a point where, and this is the problem that everybody wants to have, where you build an application, it gets wildly popular, and then you're in hair on fire, oh my god mode, because you now have 1,000 million people trying to access your application, and you need to know that the technologies that are underneath it are good, solid technologies. And the good thing about NGINX, both open source and plus, they're foundational technologies that are rock solid, super fast, and ultra lightweight. Not to sound like I'm, doing a marketing shill here, but I'm not going to spit anything at you that's not the truth. So that you can count on that.
So just to add a little bit, I've put a couple links in the chat. NGINX open source versus plus. We have some great documentation there on the nginx.com website, and I also linked to Dylen's CNCF article. Where you can where you can read about that example.
All right. Cool. So what do we got next on the agenda?
I was going to briefly add, because it's Nick also mentioned that after even though covering the main history of NGINX, I'm done with that. But it's important to note that over time, NGINX has also developed some new offerings / tools / pieces of software, depending on how you'd rather call them. They're all the same in my view. One of them, probably one of the, I don't know if it's the most important, but it's quite relevant to this story is that after the F5 acquisition, not after the F5 acquisition of NGINX, it was before that, sometime around 2016, early 2017, Igor decided to hand off development of NGINX to the core team that was led by Maxim, which is one of the other 4 members that let me stop sharing my screen actually, that I mentioned before earlier. And after, handing off development of NGINX, the NGINX, core NGINX, or whatever we want to call it that we all know and use, he started developing a new tool that eventually became known as NGINX Unit, and that launched in NGINX Spring 2017, which was in September, October. No, it was on October 4th, 2017, which was another anniversary of Sputnik, because Igor is a huge fan of space and, space affair, space adventure, space travel. I don't know what the right word for it is, but you get the gist. So he always he has this thing about releasing the software on the release date or the anniversary date of the Sputnik release. So that's when you launch NGINX Unit. NGINX Unit is depends on who you ask, but basically it's an application that lets you, a software tool that lets you run multiple applications written in different languages and different versions of the language at the same time. So you can run a Python server running Python 2.7 and 3.5 or whatever at the same time. And, for example, do an A/B deployment, migrate traffic solely from people running a version that's running at 2.7 to 3. Whatever, and test your app that way. Maybe you have an application that has a piece of, a component that runs on Python, a component that runs on Ruby, a component that runs on Go. NGINX Unit lets you deploy all of those components together as a single unit, hence the name NGINX Unit. We've also developed a Kubernetes ingress controller, which is quite popular. It bears saying that the ingress controller that we've developed in-house is not the ingress controller that most people actually use that's also NGINX-based, because there is the official Kubernetes community ingress, which runs on NGINX. Alas, that one's supported by the Kubernetes community, and then there's basically your version of that that's supported by us. We probably will delve a little bit more into the differences between those and the next.
I give
in 2 weeks.
I can give a brief overview of that one. I've done this 1,000 million times. I mean, part of our Rancher partnership is that, this is a common thread, right? So I actually work. I won't say work. I participate in the community ingress SIG, and actually at the upcoming KubeCon, I'll be doing a talk with James Strong, who is the current SIG leader, and he and I are going to talk a little bit about the lifespan of a vulnerability. And how that gets fixed both inside our group and inside the NGINX SIG. That being said, there are actually 3 versions that are generally publicly available. I mean, probably more if you count all of the fringe cases, because there's but yeah. So there is the community ingress controller, which is actually designated as ingress-NGINX, and then there's NGINX-ingress, which is our open source version.
Not confused.
And then. Yeah, and then there is Ingress, and then there's NGINX Plus or NGINX Plus. Those 3 are the dominant ones, and then there are several. I mean, because everybody, being an open source project, as with any open source project, especially one like NGINX, which is ostensibly infinitely expandable if you understand, how to work with NJS or with how to do natively compiled C stuff with NGINX to extend it. So there are a multitude of fringe cases that where you'll get onesie twosies where there's adapted versions of NGINX out there. If you count the cloud providers, there's those as well, but they're pretty much the same underlying, as you said previously, they're the same underlying technology for the most part, with the exception of the community one is not the same as the open source one. They actually have different annotations, and that's kind of where people can get a little skew when they start talking about things, especially if they don't know the differential between the three of them. So,
well, cool. And as I said, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in 2 weeks too, since we're gonna be hopefully doing this show live from KubeCon. We shall see how things work out in the end.
spoiler alert. Yep. You thought we were gonna save that till the end. Now anyway.
We can go for this way at the end again.
Alessandro and your spoilers.
But this was not a very big announcement. We'll make a big fuss about it.
Yeah. It's big for us, but.
So do we want to move on to installing NGINX?
We're gonna go first over dev tools, I think.
Okay, dev tools first. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Which, well, just very briefly, another big open source project that we did launch recently, NGINX Agent. It's an agent that lets you interact with NGINX, open source, and Plus, wherever you have it installed. It's very much still in development. If I'm not mistaken, the goal is to add a sort of SDK to interact with NGINX eventually. I don't know that it's quite there yet feature-wise, but, it's already open source. It accomplishes some simple use cases for now, and it will keep getting developed in the future. So yeah, let's move on to DevTools. You want to go for
All right.
I think you're gonna have fancier dev environment than I.
Yeah. I mean, some of that you'll see a little bit later, but why don't you kick us off? I'm actually going to step away for 2 seconds, and I'll be right back. So kick us off with the dev tools, then I'll be back in 2 seconds, and then I'll give you my 10-cent tour of dev tools, because I have. Well, let's be honest. Everybody has their set of dev tools. It's almost like a religious topic to some degree. I recently did a presentation with Rancher that basically covers basics. So I like certain types of environments, and a lot of what I do is ostensibly window dressing, because I think some of the dev tools are boring, but I can cover more of that when I get back. I'll be 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. All right. Let me share my screen while I move this somewhere else. Let's just clean things up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Share screen. Jeez, what to share? Probably Chrome now lets you select individual tabs for sharing your screen. Interesting.
While Alessandro gets that going, I just want to remind everybody to, you can add questions to the chat, and, have your great questions answered by Alessandro and Dylan throughout the live stream. And thank you again for joining us. It's our first episode, and we're super excited. We want to also hear of different topics you guys want us to tackle in the future. So ask away in that chat.
Cool. Let's do this. Okay. So, all things considered, like I briefly hinted at Dylan back there, I don't have a very fancy development environment. I use VS Code for all my coding needs. It actually needs to be reloaded. But yeah, I have separated different workspaces, one for each project that I work on. There's one for all the Ansible stuff that I do, the Docker stuff that I do. Microservices March, which if someone wants to post a link in chat, it's on demand right now, but it was a huge effort for both the marketing team and the community analysis team over March, for week March, quite literally, detailing various microservices related one-on-one use cases. And that's pretty much it insofar as how I've got it organized. I've obviously have different packages installed to make my workflow easier, whether that's, some built-in language support. I also have Copilot, which is way better than I thought it could ever be. What else do I have interesting? I don't know. Just like new usual stuff. Catered mostly to Docker and Ansible in my case. And some bash on the side. Then some people might hate me for it. I use GitHub Desktop for managing Git and GitHub. I like how easy it is to use. Unless I need to actively use the Git command line, I will not use the Git command line. Hashtag don't hate me. But GitHub actually does.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold my tongue on that one with your Docker desktop there. But I'm gonna trump that in just a second. So yeah, we'll get to that.
That's what even did. It's not running right now, is it? No. Oh well, but I do also use Docker Desktop. Actually, it's not running right now, but it is there. Should actually open it just in case the actual demo side of things does not go well. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's GitHub. I thought it was Docker. It's kind
of I also use Docker Desktop, but this is GitHub Desktop, so double.
All right, I'm not so mad anymore. If it's GitHub Desktop, that's fine. I mean, Docker though, I don't know. We might have to. We might not be friends anymore.
I don't know. Shameless plug. These tool actually has been developed quite extensively over the last year, and now it does most of your Git use cases, unless you really need to dig into your Git history and do some crazy Git operations, which every once in a while, you need to. But 90% of the time, 95% of the time, this works just fine. Then I've got my CLI. I use iTerm, and I added the my CSH on my SIH. I don't know how you actually say that. But
that sounds right. It's my ZSH is how I always say it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a fancier way to say it, which maybe someone will tell me about it someday. But that's what I use as my shell dressing. I've also installed some additional plugins to highlight all sorts of different syntaxes. And I think I have that world famous power theme 10K skin for my CSH, which I think it got renamed to power level 1 11K. Like, I don't know. Every once in a while, there's like a breaking change into this new version altogether, which I usually only find out when I'm switching to a new laptop, and then I go to install the older theme, and it's like, oh, this repo is archived or is no longer supported. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Most of the actual dev work that I do, if I need something outside of my Mac machine, which, as you can obviously see, I'm running a Mac machine, not Windows or Linux. If I need access to a Linux system, I usually either spin up a cloud instance real quick on AWS, usually, sometimes in Azure, if I need to test something in Azure specifically. But if I just need a Linux machine, I'll just spin a cloud instance on AWS. Or alternatively, if I just want to do some simple testing that does not depend on system-related features, I will just spin up a container, add a bunch of container, SSH into the container, do my quick testing, and destroy the container. And I think that's pretty much it insofar as my dev environment goes. And then, well, I mean, yeah, like I mentioned before, so briefly, I do also use Docker Desktop, which Dylan will not hate me for it. I don't know, it just works, and it works nicely on Mac. Docker has made some questionable decisions this past few months, but I still kind of take what's easy day to day over what's probably correct. I don't know. Hashtag again.
I don't actually dislike it. I was just playing some fun there. It's nice to have a good rivalry. You know, I'll be honest. I love Rancher Desktop. I used to be a Docker Desktop guy. because of the way I came up, I started in the Windows world and kind of migrated to the Linux world. So I'm not so averse to user interfaces as most of the. Even though I did a fair bit of work with Sun Solaris and AIX and some really old technologies that probably most people don't know what they are. If I could talk about things like Banyan Vines, which would probably people would be like, "What? That used to be a thing." Yeah, but that's basically what the Windows file system or the Windows Active Directory is pretty much based off of. But yeah, no, I'm not an enemy of the state when it comes to Docker desktop. I just I have my preferences, and maybe it's because I'm on the Rancher partnership and I really like Rancher stuff, but I like Rancher desktop better.
Does
And with that,
desktop work on a Mac?
oh yeah, let me show you how that goes.
All right.
In fact, I wrote a song about it. Like to hear it? No. Let me do a little thing. We'll flip over to.
I'm just gonna say I would actually like laugh out loud, very much.
If I did have a song, yeah,
like,
no,
right now.
I'll do that for next stream. I'll write a song for that.
To beat
That's
a little bit. Like that.
If you can convince any of our teammates to come on and do interpretive dance, I'll write a song.
I mean, we can make a party.
I mean, I've got a few instruments over here, so I mean, I could probably bang something out. Let's see. Can you guys see my desktop all right?
Yeah, we can.
All right, perfect. So
just a tad.
all right, so let's do this. All right, that's right, Mac. That's out. All right, so I'm going to start off in the same place that Alessandro did, and then we'll go from there. And please ignore my pictures folder with the copious amount of memes in it. So we do a lot. In addition to doing a lot of work, part of that means that we have a lot of fun in the Community Alliances team. So our Slack channel is always a hoot. And by the way, I know. I was just gonna say. Our official mascot for the NGINX Community Alliances team is an otter. So while we fully support Jinx the cat and all his endeavors or her endeavors, but the otter for us is king. So we have many otter memes, which sounds goofy, but sometimes when you're working on these projects or you're pushing towards deadlines, as I'm sure everybody in the industry can understand, it can become very stressful. So having that kind of an outlet is fun, and having teammates you can share it with is also fun. So, all right, let's see. Let me get this up and running. So I don't have as many plugins as you do. So you may have. I only have. So I also use Visual Studio Code. I used to be an Atom guy, and then before that it was Notepad++. I'm a big fan of trying to find easier ways, or work smarter, not harder, or however that thing goes. So when I discovered VS Code, I don't know, many years ago, I kind of dipped out on Atom and then moved to VS Code. I work on, yep.
I was going to say, I also used Atom when I began, and then at some stage I realized after Microsoft acquired not NGINX, oh my god, after Microsoft acquired GitHub, I realized that like one of both was going to die, and like obviously it was going to be Atom.
Yeah, and TrendyWiz42 in chat says Sublime Text. Absolutely, I've used that in the past as well. I forget the theme. That was back when I first started using Sublime. That was the first time I was introduced to the dark theme, which is now kind of everywhere. But it is again, yeah. It's like Notepad++ if you're on Windows and you grew up in the days I don't use my code editor is a text editor. Notepad++ is another one of those classics like Sublime. Sublime is way more advanced than Notepad++, but they're both in the same kind of category for me. I've replaced all those with VS Code. And for those who don't know about it, some people, I know that there's this, I don't even know if it's the case anymore. And if there's this aversion to Microsoft made things, I think they kind of, in my eyes, well, they can never make good on things they've done in the past. They have made good. And right now, from what I understand, I think they're the #1 open source contributor of any enterprise company out there, including AWS. And so I think that's it's a step in the right direction. That being said, if you don't want to send telemetry to Microsoft, there is a project called VS Codium, and I'll pull that up real quick.
I just want to point out real quick, like Chapel said that a real developer uses. Can I show it here? Yes, a real developer uses steady hands and a polarized needle. That's all you really need.
Steady hand and a polarized needle. Is that a tattooing needle? I don't know. What is that? What is a polarized needle?
I don't quite get into, but it's just funny. Polarized needle.
Maybe I'm gonna have to look that up, but not online.
Hey Dylan, can you move your window just to the right a little bit? Can you move that window?
What's that?
Can you pull that window to the right?
This one?
Yes. There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. I can also move my face around, so wherever you guys want me, if it makes sense for me to be down here, I can be down there.
Yeah,
I need to find a link to that thing.
All right, so we'll go back to there, and what we'll do is we'll just do this. There. Better?
Yeah.
All right, I'll try to make sure my face is not in the way of everything. So VS Codium is essentially VS Code. They basically just branch the code base since it's open. And the big differential between that and VS Code is there are some subtle differences. Like I don't use VS Codium for some more vanity reasons, not personal vanity reasons, but vanity window reasons. Like some of the things that I like to use don't quite work with VS Codium yet. So I'm just waiting for them to catch up. With some of the extensions that are available in VS Code. But the good thing about this is it's exactly like VS Code. You get all the good stuff you get with VS Code, except it's freely licensed and they don't send any telemetry to anybody. So that's just wanted to mention that if folks are inclined to not use VS Code for that exact reason, there is an alternative. So I have a couple of items in here. Everything I do is generally centered around Kubernetes. So I started off when I first moved to F5 working with OpenStack, and anybody who's worked with OpenStack is, and has gone through therapy and gotten over working with that OpenStack knows that when you move to Kubernetes, it was like, thank you. This makes a lot more sense. Containers, then Docker, then container management, and now we're kind of we're now moving into the world of WASM, which is something I'm still learning about myself because I'm so entrenched in the Kubernetes space. I use basic tools, right? So I have a theme, of course. This is my favorite one. This is actually funnily enough, this is the reason why I haven't moved to VS Codium. I like this theme, and it's not available on VS Codium, so I won't move to it. It's stupid, but it's true. Also, Fig. Fig is interesting because what Fig does is it actually runs on the system here. So when you look at Fig's dashboard, it's not just, I use it primarily for things like the autocomplete feature, which is an interesting, so if you're using any tools, Fig usually has some sort of interpreter that will allow you to basically get an IntelliType-like experience for any command line stuff. So when you're using things like kubectl or nerdctl or Docker Compose, this will give you, if you don't want to have to do docker -help all the time and try to remember what all the options are, this actually shows you them. And for those who have fantastic memories, you probably don't need this. My memory is terrible, so I really like this as an option. But there are other things you can do with Fig, which I find highly useful. So if you want to build yourself, if you're running a bunch of bespoke scripts and you want to kind of consolidate those into a command line, you can actually build a command line using Fig, which I think is amazing. Now, there's a 4-pay version and there's a free. It's most of the features I think are available in the free version. So I'll give that caveat. I'm not being paid by Fig, so this is me shilling for it is basically just because I like the tool. Harken back to the previous comment, I'm never ever going to show you guys. Okay, come here a second. I'm never going to show you guys a tool that I don't love just because I was told to show it to you. So keep that in mind. All right, so so Fig is really awesome. I use that. It's a basic install. I attach it to my GitHub account. It's pretty useful. I use GitLens by Kraken. I like that because when you're looking at if you're looking through Git and you're trying to figure out merge conflicts, or you're just working with a code base and you want to kind of see a visualization, GitLens is really nice. A lot of people who use it probably understand why it's really nice. Of course, the Kubernetes plugin, which also comes with the YAML language support. I put a Markdown linter in here just because I do a lot of stuff. I work a lot with Markdown, and in fact, another tool I'll show you here in just a second is entirely based off of Markdown and amazing as well. And then there's just some vanity items like material icons. I also use OhmyZSH. So if I open a terminal, I have basically OhmyZSH. I'm using Powerline fonts. Now, there's a whole lot of on a Mac. There's a few different ways to install Powerline fonts. But when I was looking at building this right here, let me show you this real quick. Actually, I got to keep it over there, don't I? So if you go into this Ingress workshop thing that we've been working on, and there's a lot of stuff in there, and we'll cover parts of this in future. Why is that link not working? Okay. In future episodes where we might go deep on some of the things you can do in these workshops with the labs and whatnot. But there's actually a starting tutorial in here under Docs and Rancher Desktop, where basically I originally wrote this as a gist, and then we converted it into a Markdown file just to put it. Well, it was a Markdown file in both, but we converted it and put it into this and into this repo, and basically it runs you through all of these tools. So I use a Mac, I install Xcode, I install Homebrew. Homebrew is awesome. Most people who use a Mac understand that using Homebrew makes it quite a bit simpler. You get kind of like that that yum or that app-get experience on a Mac. I found out recently that Windows is actually working on one called WinGit or something like that, which is supposed to be very similar to Brew. I also use VS Code, VS Codium. I install OhmyZSH with Powerline fonts. This is what I wanted to show. So nerd fonts. So it used to be kind of a pain to install Powerline fonts and for those who don't know what a Powerline font is, really quickly, if I were to, let's see, am I in a repo here? I am not in a repo. Okay, so if you're in a repo, basically what it does is it gives you like it augments your command line so that you can have essentially breadcrumbs at your command line, which is super useful, especially when you're working in Git and you frequently are moving between branches. You know what branch you're in and whether or not you've committed your changes, at what stage your commits are in, so on and so forth. So Powerline fonts are highly useful in that regard. So nerd fonts, highly recommended, because if you're running on a Mac, they were very kind in creating essentially a brew install for this. So you can literally just do a grab this brew command right here and substitute the font name for whatever font it is. I use Mononoke is my favorite. And then you basically get Powerline fonts. In VS Code, you just basically change your terminal to the Powerline font that you want. Moving back to here, and let's see, where was I? I was at VS Code. Setting up tools. Go down. All right, so it's not going to go down. So we covered Fig. I also use Fig, and that's one of the tools I use. Now, we're not going to go into local K3S environments this episode because that's a whole topic unto itself. But the rest of this essentially goes into how to build a local K3S based Kubernetes environment and put our Ingress controller in place. We'll talk about that in a future episode, hopefully. I also have a bunch of outside of the code editor tools that I use. Like I am a huge fan of this tool called Joplin a lot. I mean, when I first started using it, it was just like one of those like websites circa 19 or 2000 something where it was lots of text and, very, very few fanciness. Very little fanciness. Now it's gotten pretty fancy. But the thing I like about Joplin is it allows you to store encrypted versions of all your notes. It's very similar to the Mac Notes tool. It's written entirely. You can write either with a WYSIWYG editor or with Markdown. I love doing all documentation in Markdown, just like I like to do all presentations in Java if I can, using something. There's another tool called Reveal, which we might cover in a future episode, so it's great for storing notes, and you put those notes up on OneDrive or Dropbox or Box or whatever storage location you want. It's fully encrypted, so you don't have to worry about people digging through your notes, and you can sync it to anything, including your phone, which I think is amazing because I frequently will be like, oh shoot, what was that thing I was trying to remember? And I can pull up Joplin on my phone and look at my notes, and I take a crazy amount of notes. Like I have so many notes, and that includes code snippets and little shortcuts for command line stuff that you might want to remember. It's just a great tool for that. Now, outside of that, I also have in my garage I have a 24U rack that's essentially built for enterprise grade. And I actually use all Ubiquity small enterprise grade hardware. So I have a UDM Pro, I have a smart NIC. It's one of these days, if we ever in a future episode, if you guys want to do a tour of what do our setups look like, I could walk you through my streaming setup, which is crazy. Basically, I'm the type of person, I am engineer all the way to the core, which means that if I can engineer my way out of a problem, I will absolutely do that, and if I can over engineer it, even better. So I will do that as well. I use that, and then I have a Blade server, and then on that I run a tool called XCP-NG, which is essentially an open source version of the ZenWorks virtualization tool, and there's that I think. Yeah, so I have Zen Orchestra installed. So, and this is a compile of Zen Orchestra. So basically, I have a whole bunch of servers. I have 4 servers that run this. A bunch of stuff I bought off of eBay. I love repurposing old technology, so I like to take crusty old technology and make it new again. So I have what's called a. No, I'm not going to get into it, but I have a Blade server, and that's pretty extensive in the garage. So so that's my virtualization solution. So I can pretty much build anything. So later when I do my bit, and I show you how to install Docker, install NGINX with a Docker container as an L4 load balancer, which will be a real quick demo for me. Once Alessandro's done with his part of his show and tell. I built essentially a VM to do that. So that's. This guy right here. So Engine Room episode 1. I built this in using XCP-NG is the name of it. All open source, great community. They've got Windows tools, and you can run it on Mac, and it runs everywhere. That's a big thing for me. I have like 3 Windows boxes and 4 Mac boxes, and hundreds of Linux boxes in my home lab. And if it doesn't run on everything, I generally try to steer away from that tool. Let's see, what else can I show you guys? I think that is. I mean, the other thing that I use a lot, which is Rancher Desktop. So I'm just going to cover Rancher Desktop briefly because I could literally talk for hours on this thing. And at some point in a future episode, we probably will. I like it because one of the problems that I used to run into is I would install whatever local version, like I'm using K3S or I'm using Minicates or whatever to set up a Kubernetes environment locally, or if I'm working with one in a cloud provider, or whether that's AWS, GCP, Azure, or DO, or Linode, you have to go gather all these tools. You have to get kubectl, you have to get Docker, you have to get Docker Compose, you have to get kubectx and kubens and all these command line tools. Helm. This actually, give me just a second here. Hopefully I won't. I'll get this right the first time. Nope. Sorry, my passwords are ridiculous. It comes from being an X security developer. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here because I don't want to try to remember my password for too long. But anyways, this essentially downloads all that stuff, including Nerd Cuddle. It runs K3S, which was gifted to the CNCF. If you're familiar with that, so it also runs natively. It runs Nerd Cuddle and Containerd, I think is the container runtime. And I like it because in addition to having all those things installed, if you want to reset it at any given time, you can do a complete reset of your Kubernetes environment. You can do a factory reset, which ground zeroes everything, including Kubernetes, so it kills all your containers. You can run containers in Rancher Desktop directly using Containerd. And then when you get into the Kubernetes environment, they actually have like a little mini Kubernetes desktop type situation where you can use it as kind of a window to look at what's happening in the cluster. Like I do most of my stuff at the command line, but it is kind of nice to have a 50,000 foot view of the cluster so that I can go sometimes if I'm like, okay, rather than having to do like a million describes to try to figure out a problem or dig through logs, you can just kind of click on a few things to do a quick diagnosis and then start digging in. It kind of really saves you time to kind of narrow down problems when you're working in a dev environment. So Rancher Desktop, really like it. I think that's most of the tools. I could probably go on and on, but I think those are the important ones for me. So we have some crossovers, Alessandro. I mean, oh my CSH. I'm pretty sure you're using some form of a Powerline font. Most people do.
Yeah, I didn't cover that because like fonts. It's like such a deep subject, but yeah, I don't remember which one, but I'm using one. I also installed from Homebrew because I install everything from Homebrew, which I should have mentioned too. Because why not use Homebrew? It's so easy, even though a lot of pure engineers, quote unquote, pure, will call it blasphemy too, and be like, "Oh, you shouldn't build everything from source for." Darwin or whatever. I'm just M1 now that I'm running an M1.
I think it's fun to do that once. I think you should. It's like fundamentals. Like by all means,
it's good to learn how those things work.
Create a sandwich, or a burger, or make fettuccine Alfredo from scratch once. But then after that, maybe you want to take some shortcuts because it's really time consuming, especially fettuccine Alfredo. So that's I think that at some point in time you're going to run into a crunch. We all know what crunch is. We've all experienced it. It is no fun for anybody. And anything you can do to buy back some time. I'm not going to say save time because that's kind of like saving money. You don't really save money. You just don't spend more of it, right? Or you don't use more of your time. You can't really save it because it's a finite resource that's continually happening and et cetera, et cetera. Yep. It's kind of like, don't get me started about the AI topic. So maybe someday we'll get into that on this show.
Artificial intelligence. What does that even mean? All right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so briefly, I did actually find that XKCD that Jabberwock was mentioning about real programmers using polarized needles.
Okay.
You know,
You'll have to link me that in Slack because I can't read it. Oh, maybe I can.
Bigger. Nope. Did I go somewhere? I went somewhere. Okay. Does this work? There we go. How big can I make it? Oh wait. Now I'm turning the wrong thing around. I need like 3 screens to make this work. All right. There we go. Basically, real programmers use Emacs, Nano, Vim, Ed, Cat, a magnetized needle in a steady hand, but really, real programmers use butterflies. They open their hands and let the delicate wings flap once. The disturbance ripples outward, changing the flow of the eddy currents in the upper atmosphere. These cause momentary pockets of higher pressure air to form, which act as lenses that deflect incoming cosmic rays, focusing them to strike the drive platter and flip the desired bit.
Okay, so but see, my problem with this is that you went into the drive platter scenario, and like honestly, I work for Veritas, so I know storage really well, and I mean, no. not when I can have, well, for fast storage, there's SSDs are super cheap. So
Yeah, I mean,
how are you going to run? How is that process going to work on an SSD or an NVMe or a tape drive?
Where this is not well, even.
I'm kidding, but
like,
yeah.
Who uses hard disk drive these days? I mean, some people do. Yeah. It's really not the norm anymore.
I use it for long-term backup. To be honest, I have a. That was one of the tools I didn't cover, which is I have 2 TrueNAS servers in the garage. One of them is solid state storage, and the other one is platter drives. And the platter drives are literally just where I back up all my VMs to. So.
Yeah, I still have some hard disk drives for that too, but honestly, these days, whenever one of those starts to fail, I'm just gonna replace it with an SSD because there's no reason not to. At this stage, it might actually be even cheaper than a hard disk drive.
Yeah. So I have a question for chat. So we've been rambling for the last 45 minutes or so about our tools. What kind of tools do you guys are? So I saw a lot of my support, and I'm sure there's a few people in there that are familiar with a lot of the tools that we use. So, but if you guys have tools ideas, or if we didn't discuss one, I'm always in the market for new tools. Yeah. So yeah, tell us about the tools you use, because A, that would be interesting, and B, I'm always looking for new toys, just like anybody else. So.
Just real quickly, real developers push code through the margins that exist on their body and purify it into core. That's getting it.
Now we've gotten into the metaphysical stuff. Well, interestingly enough, maybe in a future topic we can discuss about using the cellular structure of trees as a storage foundation, which is actually a real technology being worked on right now. If you can believe that.
Oh no, I think I did read about that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I actually.
Genetic storage. That's a thing. It is.
It seems cool.
Yeah.
Just I don't know.
All right.
People and through crazy ideas. I'm right.
Yeah.
Well, engineers.
That's why we're here, right? It was because of one people and his crazy idea that we're all here today, right?
Oh yeah, truly. Oh,
all right. So what do we got up next, Marco?
I have it somewhere. We're gonna move into installing NGINX.
Yeah, we're into the NGINX portion of our show.
All right.
But real quickly, Jabberwock here mentioned what it's using is using on my CSH, which I guess is a recurring theme amongst a lot of us, a Sublime Text, Git Kraken,
mm-hmm.
which I've seen a few people use too. Actually, I have got some close friends. I don't know if anyone in your team uses it, but I've got some other close friends that use Git Kraken over any other Git control tool. And 1Password, which is one of the fundamental classics insofar as password management.
Yeah, 1Password. Honestly, I use one. A lot of people use 1Password, or I think Password Plus or something. I've been using KeePass Again, I'm not paid by KeyPass. It's open source project. It runs on anything, including my phone. And I like it. The only problem with it is it still sends me to SourceForge to go get it, which I don't like doing. SourceForge is an icky place. Other than that, yeah, I mean, a password repository is awesome. I actually just keep the DB encrypted on my Google storage drive. So I can stand it up.
Yeah, I use Dashlane, which is, yet another password manager, but it works fine, honestly, for most of my day-to-day needs. All right, with that out of the way, I guess we can move into the next section. Cue flashy something on our screen that we don't have.
Yeah. We need some. We need some. What are those called? Where you when you switch between video content. Yeah. What is that called? A stinger. We need stingers.
Yeah, something like that. With like the title of the new section or something like that. Install NGINX. Keep me a thing.
Yeah. Call marketing. Get us some stingers. Quick. Stat.
All right. Let me set this thing up. Okay, so now into the actual tech side of things. Not that we've not been doing tech things until right now, but okay. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this.
This is the part where we put Alessandro chose to do the hard path. They say you can choose the easy path or the hard path. He chose the hard path, which is I'm just going to wing it.
I mean,
we get to see some of his command line foo right now. So,
sure, or you get to see me fail miserably at doing everything.
Both are interesting. Both are interesting. So. Chat, real quick. How many people in chat are like it better or worse when you see people and their failures as part of the content you're viewing, or do you like the highly polished, no failures kind of content? So thumbs. Do we have like a thumbs up, thumb down thing in chat, Marco?
Yeah, people can use emojis to thumbs up.
Yeah. So thumbs up if you like. If you like to see failures, thumbs down if you don't like to see failures.
Truthfully, I like to see the messy failures because it's always the little workarounds, the fixes that you have to do to get it back up and running. Or even if it doesn't work, it just shows that like this happens sometimes, but it doesn't mean like the product that we're using is bad. It's just sometimes the demo gods don't like us.
Okay. Sharing my
agreed.
No, that worked. Okay. My screen crashed. No, I'm back. I am back. Sure. Also. Okay, so I spin up or I deployed an Ubuntu 22, I think, instance on AWS right before starting the live stream. Wait, Ubuntu 22. Yay. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how to install NGINX open source using the NGINX docs. So it's going to be a very... I see so many thumbs up in chat. I don't know what's going on. But okay. Anyways, thumbs up, I guess. I'm going to be using the NGINX docs. I've done this a few times already, but it's been a little bit since I did it last time, so let's see how it goes real quickly. I guess just to show you how you will do it IRL or in real life for people that don't know slang or don't use slang that much, which I do use a lot of slang. So if you sometime don't understand something I'm saying with slang, just let me know about it. Anyways, you go to nginx.org, which is the NGINX open source website. You click here on documentation on the bottom right. You click installing NGINX on the top. Then you click packages here in the installation and Linux section. And I will say this whole path doesn't necessarily make the most sense. This website needs some revamping, which is on the roadmap, TM. But for now, just make sure you remember you have to click installing NGINX and then the packages word. And from here, you just pick your OS, which could be RHEL and its derivatives, which include CentOS, Oracle Linux, Rocket Linux, ARM Linux, Debian, Ubuntu, SLS, Alpine Linux, or Amazon Linux. In this case, let's go to Ubuntu, and let's start copying commands, because really that's what I usually do when I'm looking at some docs. Who cares if they work or not? In this case, see, they're not working already. I should have updated apt first. And hopefully that was the issue. Because if not, we are off to a great start. Let's see. There we go. Let's try running that again. Aha, it works now. Yay, success, we did it. Reddit, except we're not on Reddit. I might spend way too much time on Reddit. Okay, so this first step is installing some of the prerequisites. Curl, which you really don't need day-to-day with NGINX. Curl, you're just going to be using in some of the following steps. But you will need to have GPG, some level of GPG installed, the CA certificates package, and the Ubuntu keyring. The LSB release package is there to make the installation way easier. So let's get the NGINX signing key. I don't usually verify that the file I downloaded is the proper key because I trust that our servers have not been hacked and you're downloading the key from our servers. But you never know. So if you want to be extra sure, you can check it, see that the data here. Sure. Zoom in my terminal. Let's go. That's better. See that the data here matches the data on the website. 2011, August 19, expires 14th June 2024. That looks right. 573 BF over here, 573 BF over here. And they both end on BF62. That's probably good enough. I am not going to actually match every single letter because that will take quite a bit of time. But let's assume that it's safe. Then you will be able to choose between stable NGINX and mainline NGINX. I always advise people to use mainline NGINX. That's where all of our latest features and some minor bug fixes only make it to mainline NGINX. Stable NGINX is maybe you're running some critical system that really needs to a package that only changes ever so slightly every once in a while. That's when you're going to be using stable NGINX. Major bug fixes for CVEs and whatnot, and also like major, well, not major features, but like minor features that might be like mission critical to help deliver one use case or another might make their way into the stable NGINX package. Even though that doesn't happen all that often, it's usually only major bug fixes that make their way to stable NGINX packages. But so insofar as new features, they usually just keep to mainline NGINX. There is only one major release of stable NGINX per year, usually around the fall timeframe. The exact date does change, it's not set in stone, but around fall, September, October, November, we publish a new version of NGINX stable that basically contains the latest updates made to the mainline NGINX package right before we transfer into the NGINX stable package. Anyways, in all honesty, unless you really don't want to be updating NGINX all that often, there's no reason to use mainline NGINX. There's never been any, as far as I know, there's never been any critical bugs introduced in mainline NGINX that we've not fixed right away, which will be maybe one reason to choose stable over mainline. So, unless you really need to, always use mainline NGINX. So we're going to copy the command here.
I would say that there are some instances where Like the one instance I can think of that I've used is if I build a demo and I know it's a point in time snapshot, and I know that there are features in NGINX that I'm going to be using that I don't want to have to worry about. Hey, I wrote this tutorial. It's out there as a gist. There's a YouTube video on it. I'm going to lock in something like 1.14 or something like that because I don't want people to have to run into, hey, we deprecated a command or something like that, and et cetera. So that's like the one use case I can think of where specifying an NGINX version is useful. So
you could also specify a mainline NGINX version that doesn't necessarily tie into stable or mainline, really.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
At least that's what I've done in the past. Anyways, then you gotta pin the repository, which is something that you don't necessarily have to do in older versions of Ubuntu, but these days, if you're using, I think, starting with Ubuntu 20 and Ubuntu 22, since they have their built-in NGINX, well, they've always had an NGINX package, but the one that they offer right now is marked with relatively high priority, unless you pin it and give it like a very high priority. When you install NGINX, you're still going to be installing the Ubuntu provided NGINX, which actually I could maybe install it real quick so you can see what version it is. Let's do that. It might not. Will it tell me? No, it won't tell me which one it is. Install it. The main issue with installing something like NGINX from the Ubuntu package repository is that and usually it's somewhat out of date. And indeed, as you can see here, it's running, it will install NGINX 1.18, which if I'm not mistaken, and we can check here real quick, the latest version of stable NGINX. Actually, there was a place here to check this. Was it like the org-stable maybe? No. I might have forgotten. We had a link. Anyways, well, here it is. It's not what I was looking for, but I will tell you. The last version of NGINX stable that we have available is 1.22.1. So that means that version shipping with Ubuntu 22 by default right now is, what is that, like 2 years old? 2.5 years old, give or take. Because 1.T4 will be out in fall this year. So yeah, you'll be installing almost 3 years old version of NGINX if you just install it from the Ubuntu repository instead of the NGINX repository.
Yeah, real quick, Trendy Wins 42 in chat is asking if we can remember, if we can actually remember a backwards incompatible change in NGINX. I actually ran into one recently. So, and like I said, I work with the Rancher partnership, and there, when they specify, the thing that I'm going to show you is a newer version of what they do, which is essentially creating essentially a perimeter load balancer with a Docker container. They actually lock into 1.14 because there is some syntax that if you try to do it in newer versions, the syntax in their tutorial does not work with the current stable version of NGINX. However, if you and that has to do with an incompatibility with the current that version of Docker that they're running. So there can be chained events where this is related to something that changed in Docker, which is in a Rancher tutorial, and if you change the syntax from A to Z or X to Y in the NGINX comp file, it doesn't work, right? Or you'll get like they'll have created a newer way to do that. So that is, like I said, most of those use cases, in my opinion, are going to be centered around fixed time content, for point in time content, because things do change, syntaxes do get updated. I don't know the specifics of that though. I can find that, but I did run into that while I was. I tried to do it my old version of it, and it did not work with current stable. But then I updated everything to current Docker, current version of NGINX, the container, and I updated the command line to deploy it, and then it worked. So unfortunately, it was 2 a.m. last night, so I didn't dig into why. But I'll do that later.
Yeah, that being said, there's not been really that many backwards incompatible changes. We've deprecated some directives over time, but there's usually a very slow deprecation deprecation timeline. Yeah, very slow deprecation timeline, and they are never necessarily a backwards incompatible. I mean, they will be backwards incompatible once the feature is deprecated, obviously, but it's not like that feature goes away. It's usually that like a new feature comes out, or a new directive, which is how we call the NGINX configuration parameters in a way, I guess, gets created that supplants the old one and has some more features or more parameters that it can add to it. And for some reason in the code base, it was not possible to just add those things to the old version of the directive, so a new one had to be created. But like in my experience, after having looked through not all of the NGINX directives, but I'd say probably about 80% of them I've had a look and like done some work with, and insofar as the directives that we have published, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 of those. They are very uncommon, like very, very uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up an interesting topic. I mean, I know that from personal experience that the NGINX core development team is very cautious about updating and changing things. I think what I was really alluding to is cross-compatibility with other solutions. It probably wasn't a problem with NGINX. It was probably a problem with Docker. Not to knock Docker, but I mean, there was something that changed in Docker that made it so that I couldn't achieve what I was doing previously. And I would have to say that the reason that we are very guarded about changing things in NGINX is there are literally I think the last number I saw was like 1.7 million or some odd websites out there that depend on, and some of these are really, really big services. Some of them call cars, some of them bring you food to your house. Some of them, are the back end for game engines to share content. There's a lot of stuff out there because NGINX is such a Swiss Army knife of a web server. The number of solutions that run on NGINX is mind-boggling to think of, and changing something that might interrupt one of those services. I know personally, or I've heard through the grapevine, that our core development team is heavily guarded about making sure that they don't do that to people. By deprecating something that a service depends on. So, and you're welcome, Vladimir.
Also,
and yes, it will be.
Yeah, I assume this will be later available on YouTube and Twitch, or however long things live on Twitch, which I actually forget.
I think Marco plans on turning it into a YouTube long form content at some point, so it will be available.
It's currently up on YouTube. You can already start scrolling backwards.
Okay.
So it's already available there. We'll be chopping up the segments as well, bite-sized, for people to kind of consume. So yeah, it's all available now.
So real quick time check. So we're coming up on the hour here, 2 hours. We thought it was questionable whether or not we could fill 2 hours with content, but I think they were not. I don't think they counted on how long-winded Alessandro and I are. So and how much there is to show, right? So how much more do you got in your demo there, Alessandro? Is it?
I mean, do demos ever end?
That's true.
Not much on this end. I was just going to show how once you pin the NGINX package, and hopefully now, once you pin it, you should be able to install the version from our repository, which is what you want to do. So hopefully this will now install the latest NGINX mainline release. Maybe it will not. That does not look promising. Yeah, actually, what happened? It did not get... Oh, I did not update the apt cache. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, that's that like 3-step mambo you have to do every time you update anything on Ubuntu is to do the app-get update in between everything for some weird reason. But
well,
yeah,
it's
update. It's not weird reason. We know why, but I mean, you get what I'm saying.
And still, at least now you can just type apt, and because apt-get is.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. I mean, this is one of those things. It's funny. Yeah, a little stupid story about why you don't do development work at 2 a.m. Is I was like found myself getting very frustrated. I was trying to update something, and I kept typing yum into the command line over and over and over, and I'm like, why is this not working? And I like, oh wait a minute, this is the wrong distro.
I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah.
I think everyone has that happen a few times. Okay, my microphone won't stop moving. Okay, so I did remove NGINX. I updated the cache again, and now the right version of NGINX got installed. We have NGINX 1.23.4 running. And if you want to double check that it's running as intended, you first probably should launch NGINX. Sudo. And now let's see. Works. There we go.
Ta-da!
You should see the welcome to NGINX page, which I am pretty sure that if this is a public IP right now, might be safe or not. It's gonna be destroyed after I'm done with the demo, so who cares? If you go here, you should be able to see the welcome to NGINX landing page.
Yay!
And
yes,
that's how you know that NGINX is working. Yay!
Yeah, this is like the number one. This is the Marco. This was the one. Didn't you say this was like one of the most popular YouTube videos on our YouTube channel? The how do you do kind of just installing NGINX for the very first time? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Always. Yeah. Yeah, it's usually one of our top videos. I really want to create I think this is great to show this again, but I want to create some follow-up videos to that one because every quarter it's our top video.
Yeah, I mean it's foundational. Honestly, the web server is the birth of everything. What Alessandro just showed is basically the first step you'll ever take into the world of NGINX.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't actually even know that we host our own packages ourselves. They just think that, whatever you get in Ubuntu or Red Hat RHEL or, whatever distro you're using is the NGINX package that exists. So it's good to keep telling people that, if you actually want to use the latest NGINX version that also includes the defaults that you'll see used in our docs, just use the package from our repo, and that's how you do it. Just adding the repo data to your, I guess, apt list here, sources list, I don't know, it depends on which distro you're using, right? But that's how you do it. And that's coming to mind from that, though, is that another reason not to use the version provided by Ubuntu, RHEL, CentOS, SLS, Alpine, whatever, is that usually some of the defaults included in some of those distros are different from the defaults that we use in our docs, which might lead to some issues on your end. I mean, you'll be able to troubleshoot it eventually, but it could bring a few headaches if you're trying to use your docs to do something or another, and the default config that you have on NGINX is the one that Ubuntu provides, and something does not quite match for X or Y specific use case. Ever so briefly, just to make things a little bit more clear insofar as NGINX versioning goes. So every year around fall, like I said, October 10th, not October 10th, October 19th, 2022, we released a later new stable NGINX, or the latest NGINX stable update went out. You'll see that's referred as 1.22.x. Mainline then became 1.23.x. Once the new stable NGINX gets released, which again will be around fall, you will see
the version of stable NGINX, it's always going to be an even number. So it'll be NGINX 1.24, which will be fundamentally based on the latest mainland release. So right now it's 1.23.4. Maybe by fall it'll be like 1.23.6 or .7. Whatever that is will become NGINX 1.24, the new stable release, and mainline will move on to the next minor odd number, which will be 1.25. So around the same time as stable gets released, as 1.24 gets released, NGINX mainline 1.25.0 will get released.
All right. So it looks like we're coming up on the end here real quick. So we got about 5 minutes left. So do you want to, do you have something that's critical, or should I jump into my demo? Or I think I can shotgun this. It's the easy.
I was gonna say, I don't know that we are capped to 2 hours, unless.
I don't know. That's I know people have things to do. I don't know, Marco, are you good at going beyond 2 hours, a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I can go over a couple of minutes, or I mean, I can go over. So yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. I wasn't sure. All right. So carry on, Alessandro. I just wanted to make sure we had enough time at the end.
Anyways, but like, if you want to do your thing, I'd say just do it. Don't worry about timing necessarily. If people have to run somewhere else, this will be on demand after the live stream is done.
Absolutely.
So, might as well.
Yeah, and towards the end, there's a couple shout out items I want to kind of go over and make sure that we ask chat for. And so we'll cover those towards the end. But my demo, real simple. Let me go ahead and switch over to. I'm going to go no cam on this one. So mine's real easy. I'm just going to show you how to run Docker as a container. One of the things that I often find myself needing in my environment is just an L4 load balancer at the perimeter, something very simple. And I'm going to shut my door, or else my beagle's going to come in here and start barking at me. All right, sorry about that. I'm just going to show you really quick how to put it in a Docker container. It's very simple. I actually cheated a little bit, and I wrote up a little gist that's based off of some of the information that I needed. And so, real quick, I spun up I probably should have got this started while I was waiting. So I spun up let's see, I got to go up here. All right, home. VMs. There we go. And we need this. And I'm going to get that started. So basically, I did something very similar. It's Ubuntu 22.04. I reinstalled Docker on it. I found out that the version that I was running had problems, as I previously had said.
Just real quick, since you don't have a camera, and you can probably make that browser thing bigger.
Okay. Yeah. So let me go ahead and this right here. This is what you want to see bigger?
Yeah, I can probably go full screen, honestly, since there's nothing, or as big as you can make it. I don't know.
And for some reason,
to see.
Yeah, I don't want to go full screen because then it's weird to when you're using a mouse in my configuration. I don't have the triple swipe that you have on the pad that you can go back and forth for.
Okay.
So I'll make it that big, and I will remember I'm on a Mac and use that instead. There. So all this is doing is basically spinning up my Ubuntu box real quick. It's already up. That didn't take too long, thank goodness. And then I'm just going to open a quick terminal session in VS Code, and I will make that bigger as well so people can see that. How's that for size? Is that pretty good? And then basically I'm just going to do a quick, I might have this. Yeah, all right. So I already have this. I'm just going to do a quick SSH into this box. Very carefully type in the password so I don't have to do it multiple times. All right, so clear that guy out. And then I'm actually just going to drop an NGINX comp file. So one of the things that I like to do is I just spin up a basic NGINX. I create an L4 load balancer, no TLS, no fancy stuff. It's basically just load balancing between 3 servers. Now the number is 3. It could be anything. For me, it's 3 because I'm usually running a 3-node cluster. In this particular case, it's built off of a rancher use case where I have a master or I have a control plane server and I have 2 worker nodes. Basically I'm just passing traffic to each of those so that I can take advantage of anything that's running in a node port configuration. Real basic comp file. So I'm just going to create that comp file. I'm going to grab this text real quick, go back in here, and I'll just do a quick sudo vi, and then we'll do a nginx.conf, do that. Oops. All right. And then I'm going to do an insert, drop this guy in there. I'm not going to do any changes, just basically put that guy in there. We'll do a quick right quit. So now if we do an ls, we can see I've got that nginx conf file in there. And then I'm just going to basically run a Docker container using this command line, which pulls from our repo. It references that config file as the config file we're going to be putting in se nginx conf. I stole this straight from the actual, instructions for this I think it's up on our Docker Hub version. So I'm basically going to do a Docker run. I'm going to name it my custom nginx container, and then I'm going to I'm going to reference that conf file, which will be dropped in place when the container comes live. So basically just copy that command, drop that guy in place, and then this should pull down the containers, start nginx, and then issue that comp file. Now I don't have the servers up and running. I just kind of want to show you what the configuration would look like, and that's it. So basically at this point in time, if I have 3 web servers and I want to load balance traffic between the 3 of them, and I just need an edge load balancer or a perimeter load balancer, this is a really short, simple use case that is very similar to when you're in a cloud environment and you tick that little checkbox that says LB or load balancer, and it gives you a load balancer, which most of them are kind of based off our load balancer, our technology. They just renamed it for, I guess, their own uses. But you get, this is essentially what you would get. Now, it is worth noting that when you build your clusters and you need to reference specific items, you probably want to have a local DNS. I actually use essentially a bind9 local DNS that I created and spun up and got running. So you want to make the appropriate changes to reference the, so that you can actually use, proper DNS to be able to reference those. But when you tell it to hit these 3 nodes, you can send it to the IP address of this server, and it will load balance to whatever 3 nodes that you've got inside your cluster, or through whatever 3 web servers you've stood up in your environment. So that's it. Real simple, super quick, highly useful use case. How do you create an L4 load balancer, a basic L4? Now, don't use this in production because there's no security on it whatsoever. And like I said, I'm not using any TLS or anything like that. While it is on 443, so you're getting that, I'm not using certs or anything like that. So this is primarily for dev use cases, but I find this to be heavily useful when you just need a basic perimeter load balancer. And that's that. That's all I got. Real quick and simple.
Cool.
Switch back to full cam.
There we go. Okay, so that was the Install NGINX part of the stream. Next, we did have a section called setting up NGINX, which we could leave for the next live stream. Maybe the one maybe not the next one, but the one after the next one. We can go into it now. Depends on how you guys are feeling about it, but it will probably take, honestly, half an hour at best, 1 hour.
Yeah.
sounds.
I'd say let's just push that to the next one. That'll give us some content. I mean, we want to share what's coming up in the future with future episodes. The next episode's going to be a pretty fun one, provided that Marco's passport comes in. So if that's the case. So yeah, let's push it to the next one, and then maybe or a future one. Let's just say a future one because
future one. More realistic would be like episode 3, given different time frames and whatnot. But
yeah. Well, and one of the things I'd like to do is, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. I like to do this. Come here a second. Thank you for coming to our talk. And it was real fun to have everybody in chat and some participation. This is the first of this episode. We really want to do something that's super grassroots. We want to do some fun stuff. We want to show all the use cases that are out there for NGINX and some that are not related to NGINX. We may have an episode where we talk only briefly about NGINX, but we might dip into technologies like Rancher or Argo or Crossplane or Ansible, and talk about some of the stuff we can do with those technologies. And most of the time will be spent on a partner technology. So we have partnerships with Ansible, Ansible/Red Hat. We have partnerships with Rancher and with Grafana and many of the other, JFrog are some of the big ones that we have that we work with. So those technologies are really important for our ecosystem. And what I wanted to ask the chat when we have some time is put whether you see us on YouTube or you're watching us right now, put in the chat what you want to see. We earnestly want to give you the content that you want to see delivered. And part of that is participating with you in the true fashion of community and open source participation. So tell us what you want to see, and we will put it into a future episode. Absolutely. So,
Dylan, I want to add to that just really quick, Alessandro. I wanted to add that if you want us to bring on other YouTubers or any partners that you want us to see interact with, give us some recommendations in the chat and in the comments, because a lot of you are probably going to now watch this on demand. So in those comments, in the chat, wherever you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Vladimir. We would love to keep going, but I think some of us have other meetings to get to, unfortunately. And maybe in the future this will become not a 2-hour episode, but a 3-hour or a 4-hour episode. But I really super appreciate the fact that you want us to keep going. So
well, I don't know if that's keep going as in keep going now or like keep going with more episodes. But
either way, it's good. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I was just gonna add to that community side of things that we might, which if you have questions that you want us to get addressed more certain topics, post it in the comments. Maybe it'd be good to some stage set up an email alias or something where people can email questions. And we can do this thing that I've seen some of my favorite shows do, which is do an episode where you just answer questions, and that's all you do. I will try to
do like an AMI.
People.
Yeah.
And what else? Oh, also just some things that we might cover coming to mind. Like, well, I don't think we should do a news, a tech news podcast because there's 1,000 of those already. Maybe if like 1 week or another something happens that is especially relevant to NGINX for one reason or another, which does happen every once in a while, maybe it'll be to focus off that live stream. We shall see.
Yeah, and if you see something in the news, by all means, we won't cover it. We're happy to try it. So if someone says blah, 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 yada, yada, something fancy happened, and go check out ChatGPT, which I really don't want to do live because I've seen that go horribly awry. But, Microsoft integrated it with Bing, and I'm actually in that program. So if we want to have, a half an hour of fun asking ChatGPT through Bing what it thinks about NGINX or whatever, just don't be surprised if it comes up with some weird ideas, and hopefully it doesn't get angry at us. So that would be fun. Anything, nothing is really off the table within a reasonable amount of fun time, right?
Just feed us ideas. assuming we can, discuss those ideas or go talk about those ideas, and it makes sense, we will actually cover them and probably even prioritize them. If not, we'll have our own agenda, obviously, for each live stream. But this show is for the community. So,
and then one more thing, join the community Slack. That's another great place.
Yes,
we're really active there. Just remember the code. Sorry, the link is in the banner right now that we're displaying. I think Alessandro is about to put up the QR code.
Yeah. So and if we need some private space, I can always talk to the ever present Hannah and see if she can give us our own little space to talk about the engine room. Just remember that the engine room is not just our engine room; it's your engine room too. So let's talk about what's coming next while you're getting that QR code. I'm gonna do a quick shout out. We will be at KubeCon. Both Alessandro, myself, and Marco will be doing an episode live from KubeCon. We don't know where, we don't know how, and that's kind of the way this whole thing's going to roll, is not knowing where and how we're going to do things. We're just going to do things. We might, like I said, we might have a special guest or a couple special guests. I tend to run into a lot of people at KubeCon that might want to come and join us on the show. Walk-ups are welcome. Try not to photobomb us if you see us filming the episode, or if you want to go stand behind the camera and do one of these things like you see at the sporting events, that's perfectly fine. Just be aware that you might get dragged into the interview, because I that's the way I roll. Join us on Slack. Go see us on YouTube. Tell us if you like the content. Tell us if you don't like the content. I hate to sound like every YouTuber on the planet, but like and subscribe, that sort of thing. What's coming up after that? So we'll do the KubeCon episode. You and I'll be there live.
Hey.
Be on the lookout for videos.
Good question. What's coming next? I don't know. I think the next episode we have scheduled will actually be at the OSS Summit. With the fear for colleagues, so we could do something also, maybe not directly live, but there will be some stuff to talk around that's related to OSS Summit. We shall see. I don't know that we planned that far ahead all that well.
Yeah, no, that would be counterproductive to the whole theme of this thing, is to not plan. Yeah, maybe we'll do an episode on how to plan to not plan. Right, we're good at that.
Oh yeah, so. I mean that's the best way to do it, really. One thing we will cover at some stage sooner rather than later is that whole setting up NGINX for basic use cases, which was going to be in today's live stream too, but now will be in the near future. So maybe that'll be in episode 3, maybe that'll be in episode 4. The one in 2 weeks from KubeCon I will be mostly focused on Kubernetes and what we do in that space, and as you mentioned, maybe we'll have a guest speaker and whatnot. So it won't be so much, I think, necessarily about NGINX necessarily, or insofar as configuring NGINX and then with it goes. But we shall see. All
right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say it's time to wrap up. Again, thanks for joining us on the Engine Room. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, everybody in chat, especially our compatriots Hannah and many of our colleagues that showed up as well to say hello and see us run this crazy thing for the first time. And we are absolutely 100% looking forward to the next one.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.